I'm Laura Yowell, and I'm one of the teachers in the DOERS class. We're starting a new book this week by James Moore. Faith is the answer, but what are the questions? This title intrigued me for two reasons. I'm a Jeopardy fan, and if you have ever watched this quiz show, you know that Alex Trebek gave the contestants the answers, and they had to come up with the questions. But there's a more important reason why I like this title. In my other lifetime, I taught American history at Western High School in Anaheim, California, while I was earning my master's degree at Long Beach State University. At Long Beach State, we had a history teacher who was the most insightful teacher I have ever had. And I asked him to come and talk to my advanced placement American history class. He told the class that answers were important, but questions were a lot more important. You could usually look up the answer in some reference book, but you had to ask the right questions in order to understand. So this turned my teaching upside down. Instead of starting class by going over the material in the book, I started by asking questions. What were the causes of this situation? What were the short-term or the long-term results? Were there other possibilities that would have led to a better conclusion? And I spent a lot of time trying to think up the right questions. But this sparked a much more meaningful discussion among my students. So I hope the questions that Moore asks in this book will spark some meaningful reflection for you. How do Moore's questions resonate with your life experiences? Have you heard anything in these lessons that you find useful or helpful? Moore starts by recalling some answers that children wrote on tests at school. In answer to the question, "When was our nation founded?" one little boy said, "I didn't know it was lost it." In answering another question, a child wrote, "A myth is a female moth." Another reported that Socrates died from an overdose of wedlock. Asked to describe the famous painting of Whistler's mother, one student explained, "It shows a nice old lady sitting in a chair waiting for the repairman to bring back her TV." Another student, reciting one of Lincoln's quotes, said, "A horse divided against itself can't stand." Or one commenting about Thomas Jefferson said, "His death was a big turning point in his life." Now, all teachers know that right answers are important, but so is asking the right question. One question we need to ask ourselves is, what does it really mean to be a Christian? Billy Graham told this story on himself. He had just arrived in a town where he was going to hold a revival, and he was walking down Main Street looking for a place to mail a letter. He saw a little boy and asked him where the post office was. The little boy told him to go on down Main Street 2 blocks, turn right 1 block, turn left, and it was right on the corner. Graham thanked him and said, "If you will come to the fairgrounds tonight at 7 o'clock, you can hear me preach. And I'm going to tell everyone how to get to heaven." The little boy answered, "I don't think so. You don't even know how to find the post office." This story reminds us that all of us are looking for something, and we need someone to help us find the way. We need someone to guide us, advise us, comfort us, and encourage us. We need someone to save us from our lostness. Our scripture is Mark 10, 17 to 22. As Jesus was setting out on a journey, a man ran up and knelt before him and asked him, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good but God alone. You know the commandments. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. You shall not defraud. Honor your father and your mother." The young man said to him, "Teacher, I have kept all these since my youth." Jesus, looking at him, loved him and said, "You lack one thing. Go, sell what you own and give the money to the poor, and then you will have treasure in heaven. Then come and follow me." When he heard this, the young man was shocked, and he went away grieving, for he had many possessions. Now, the rich young ruler's problem was he was lost. He had all the things our Madison Avenue culture tells us will make us happy: wealth, youth, and power. Yet he felt empty inside, unfulfilled, lost. He asked the right question, and he asked the right person. But when he heard the answer, he turned and walked away. The story gives us an insight into what it means to be a Christian. Not only must we ask the right question, but we must accept the right answer. First of all, Jesus is the one who shows us the way to commit our lives to God. Jesus teaches us how to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to do it joyfully. Second, Jesus is the one who shows us the way to love other people. An old hymn says it perfectly: "Lord, help me live from day to day in such a self-forgetful way that even when I kneel to pray, my prayer shall be for others. Yes, Lord, yes, others. Let this my motto be. Help me to live for others, that I may live like thee." Jesus teaches us that the best way to show our love for God is to love others just as he did, tenderly, graciously, sacrificially, and unconditionally. Third, Jesus is the one who shows us the way to celebrate life. The joy of life is not in material things. They rust, break, or go out of style. The real joy in life is following Jesus to find meaning and purpose and fulfillment. Some years ago, a fire broke out in a hotel in Chicago. Flames and smoke blocked the normal escape routes. Some people went out on the balcony to escape from the smoke, but then they were trapped there. They thought they were doomed. One young man braved the smoke and ran back into the building. Fortunately, he found the fire escape. Then he made his way back through the flames and the smoke and said, "Follow me, I know the way." And he saved all their lives that day. Jesus tells us, "Follow me, I know the way." How does faith help us when problems arise? How does Christian faith strengthen us when suffering or tragedy or heartache explodes our lives? Those are the questions that we will explore in this book. Our next question is, whom should we trust? Let's look back to Moses to answer this question. He had led the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. He kept them together as they wandered for 40 years in the Sinai Peninsula, and he had to give them instructions they could hold on to as they made their way into the Promised Land. In Deuteronomy 6:1-8, this is what he said. Now this is the commandment, the statutes and the ordinances, that the Lord your God charged me to teach you to observe in the land you are about to cross into and occupy, so that you and your children and your children's children may fear the Lord your God all the days of your life, and keep all his decrees and commandments that I am commanding you, so that your days may be long. Hear therefore, O Israel, and observe them diligently, so it may go well with you, so that you may multiply greatly in the land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God and Lord alone. You shall love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Keep these words that I am commanding you today in your heart. Recite them to your children and talk about them when you are at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you rise up. Not only are we to trust the Lord our God, but we are to teach his commandments to our children and our grandchildren. And sometimes we forget. Two men were talking over lunch. The first one said, "My wife has a terrible memory." The second man asked, "Forgets everything, does she?" The first man replied, "No, she remembers everything." Most of us have trouble remembering things. The problem of being forgetful is not a new challenge. It's as old as the Bible itself. Moses is reminding the people that the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. The children of Israel are getting ready to enter the Promised Land, and Moses knows he is old and will not be going with them. So he gives them the great commandment to remind them to put God first and to serve God alone, and to put their faith and trust in God alone. When we face an uncertain future, remember God is with us. In the great musical, The Sound of Music, the Von Trapp family find that their beloved homeland, Austria, has been occupied by the Nazis. And the Nazis are demanding that Captain Von Trapp join their army. He and Maria carefully plan their escape, but when they get to the Abbey for refuge and escape, they learn that the Nazis have closed all of the roads to the border. Their only way out is to climb across the mountains. Maria is worried that their 7 children cannot make such a long and dangerous journey. But Mother Superior quotes from Psalm 121, "You will not be alone. Remember, I will lift up mine eyes to the hills, from whence cometh my help. God be with you." They left confident that God would see them through, and he did. So when we walk into an uncertain future, we can be sure that God is with us and we must follow him. Second, when we are tempted to be less than our best self, remember God is with us. Moore tells a story about when he was a boy and he was injured in a junior league baseball game. The doctor was tending to his wound, and the coach came and told him that he had to take the other boys home, but he would send someone to take more home. The man who came was the town grouch. In fact, all the kids were afraid of Mr. Tony. Moore climbed into Mr. Tony's old truck, and they rode in silence. When they stopped in front of his house, Moore said, "Thanks for the ride, Mr. Tony." Mr. Tony looked angry and said, "Thanks? How much gas do you think that'll buy?" Moore stammered, "I'm sorry, Mr. Tony, I don't have any money." "Then get out of my truck," Mr. Tony shouted. Moore was hurt and embarrassed, and he never forgot that incident. Years later, when Moore was driving home from college, he noticed someone hitchhiking near his hometown. It was Mr. Tony. Moore stopped and picked him up and drove him to his home. When Mr. Tony got out, he said, "Thanks for the ride, Jim." Moore wanted so much to say, "Thanks. How much gas do you think that'll buy?" But he caught himself, and he said, "You're welcome, Mr. Tony. I'm always glad to help a friend." We face temptations all the time to be less than our best selves. That's the time to remember to love God and love others. Third, when we have to face death, remember God is with us even then. This is the good news of our faith. When we have to face an uncertain future, when we have to do battle with temptation, when we have to face death or the death of a loved one, we can remember God's great promise to always be with us, and we can remember to love God with all our heart, our soul, and our might. Let's close with prayer. Dear God, thank you for being here with us in times of trouble, temptation, and uncertainty. Help us to remember to put our trust in you and follow you.